Hey everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com. It's about 6:30 on June 18th, 2013. We're going to take a look at the chart. But before we do, I need to remind you that the website and the video are for educational purposes only, and nothing stated at the site or in the video is intended to be used as investment advice. I can draw lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research and make investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation. I am not a licensed financial professional. I'm just a guy who draws lines on charts. Okay, we're starting out looking at a 30-minute chart. And coming into today, there were really two things that I was trying to keep an eye on and trying to encourage you to keep an eye on too. And the main thing was this top line here right at about 1548, and this bottom line that is a rising line of support. The idea being that we have come out of our descending channel and we are forming a pattern that, for the most part, up until today, seemed to be telling us that it wanted to go sideways, then decide whether it's going to go up or down. And this is a really interesting chart because we see a couple of different things working, and we're really kind of getting to where some of these lines, particularly this neckline from our kind of slightly strangely shaped head and shoulders, if you want to call it that. Whether you call this a head and shoulders, it's a goofy looking one if it is, or you want to ignore this left shoulder and just say it is a triangle. Either way works, frankly. And this neckline worked. It broke down, back tested, then came down to about 1598, just barely missing the expected minimum target of about 1596 from this topping pattern. But as we project this line out to the right, we would typically expect such a line to give us resistance. It used to be support, but you know, once support turns on you, or once resistance turns on you, it typically starts to act opposite of what it was before. So this used to be support, now it should be resistance. Just like this line right here. Used to be resistance. Let's go to an hourly chart. Used to be resistance back here. Now that it broke, it tends to be support. So this is interesting. We've got what appears to be something of a set of dueling trend lines where something eventually is going to have to give. Now, if we zoom in a little bit on our triangle pattern, you can see that the tops, if we call this a top and this a top and this a top right here, they don't match up. So it's a little bit open to interpretation where we put this line. So let's say this first touch right here is an absolute certainty. Let's say without a doubt that is a correct data point. Then we line it up with the next correct data point right here. Well, if we do it that way, then you can see we actually closed underneath this line, and we would expect tomorrow to be a down day. However, if we ignore this little opening spike up that took place at the open on the 10th, and we rather go with the resistance encountered during the middle of the day on the 10th, then we extend that line out and we're over it. As a matter of fact, it looks like we maybe even bounced a little bit on that 1650 level. If that's the case, then we would be looking potentially for an up day tomorrow. So this is interesting, and quite frankly, I don't think we'll know the answer until we see what happens over the next day, because either one of these could be right. And if we include this little top that we put in yesterday early on, then we are even more above this top line, and this top line becomes even more horizontal. So I'm just making you aware of that, because there is no super clear answer to what we're seeing right now with regards to that 1648, 1650-ish level. So I think we need one more day to establish whether or not 1650 will have been turned into support, or whether, and that would be the case if this is the correct position of this line, or if this is the correct position of this line. But if this is the correct position of it, then this line could still be resistance. And I'll remind you that regardless if this is correct or if this is correct, I still need to let you know that this move over that line today was not at that 1% margin that we typically look at for being an important move, and a move that carries with it some important technical implications. Now, I'm doing one more thing here. I think you probably picked up on this, is I'm going to extend a couple of lines out that sort of pretty well define where the S&P has traded for the last about 4 days. We've had a bottom, a top, a bottom, a top, a bottom, and potentially a top here. And these little movements up and down are defined, or at least they could be interpreted as being defined by this support line and this resistance line. And if that is the case, what are we making here? Well, we may be making an ascending wedge. And if we are making an ascending wedge, remember we talked about that if this pattern here does serve as a reversal, and we get technically significantly above this line here, then we measure the first reactive move inside the pattern to the point of the breakout, and that would take us to an expected level of about 1696. And again, that moves up or down a little bit depending on where we put this this top line. If we say it's here, then we haven't broken out yet, but when we break out, we would expect a little bit more than 1700. But I'm going to keep it kind of where we had it and call today possibly a breakout. What's interesting here is if we follow our little wedge up and we see where we get the apex, assuming that this plays out as it has over the past 4 days, if this continues to be resistance here and this continues to be support here, I just find that kind of, by way of just peculiarity, it's interesting that we find the apex would point to that same level as the target from this little ascending triangle pattern. That's not a prediction. That's just something that seems to happen fairly often. So guys, going into tomorrow, if we get more upward momentum, then we need to look at this old neckline from this head and shoulders top or triangle, whatever you want to call it. See if the S&P has the strength to break out over this line. Because if it does, then I think that 1695 is like a done deal. I think that makes it really, really, really a very high probability. But if we turn back down and start to kick around in this thing a little bit more, then this may turn the market back a little bit if we get there. Or again, I think this is an important line. If we get over it, then 1695, 1696, which would be the projection of this pattern. But we got to get over this line. And until we get over this line, we are not in a technically significant breakout over this line, because our pattern resistance line here is at approximately 1648, and if we measure what it would take for us to break out over this purple line, we have a distance of about 12 to 13 points. So really, a move over this line of, I would say, 5 to 6 points would give us that technically significant 16 points over this line that we would look for, because 16 points is roughly 1% of where the S&P is trading. So I think it's safe to say a move over this line will set up that move to about 1695 as a minimum. I just find it interesting that we've got this little wedge-ish kind of pattern going on here, and it's possible, very possible, that we stay in this wedge and we still get the job done. So, interesting stuff. Don't know if I would call this a breakout or not today, but again, like I said, get on up to about 1662, 63, something like that. Then I think the handwriting is on the wall that this is going to keep on trucking and get on up there to the mid 1690s. I don't think there's really anything much else to take a look at here. Our little pattern right here played out very nicely. I kind of cleaned the chart up just a little bit, but I'll throw it up there again because we'll want to come back to this on our weekend review. But that was a very nice little bullish flag right here. So let's see what happens with regards to this support line. And by the way, if you're looking for a potential trigger that this pattern would fail and then we would head back down to the 1620s or high 16 teens, maybe I think this would be a good line to watch right here, because this has been support on 1, 2, 3 occasions. If that breaks, then that would be a signal that we would come back down and test that green support line in our ascending triangle pattern. And again, I just want to remind you, the real question here is, where does this green line really need to go? Because the answer is not abundantly clear. I'm going to leave it about where we had it before, and let's see how that works out. Guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Take care.